Hello, this is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Printavo, the parent company of InkSoft, Printavo, GraphicsFlow, SignTracker, and Clarity. Welcome to the webinar today. We are going to talk about pricing. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that's been, I think, challenges a lot of small shops, even a lot of big shops, and we are going to get it all out on the table today. So what we decided to do is bring in a panel of experts. Everyone on this panel has something in common, which is they're using one or more of the products in the Printavo ecosystems of products, but we've also done customer profiles. And so when we send out the reminder email after the webinar, we'll make sure to include the customer profile so you get some additional bio information on Courtney, Cassie, and Zach. So we're going to start off. We're just going to do some basic introductions. And Cassie, I'm going to have you go first. A little bit about yourself, your business, kind of what you guys do, and over to you.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Cassie Evans. I own Hometown Graphics in Garrett, Indiana. We started about 5.5 years ago with 1,400 square feet, and we've expanded to 7,000 square feet now. We are offering in-house screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, direct to film, and we specialize in a lot of online stores, which is one of the things that we're very well known for.
Excellent. Over to you, Courtney.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me. My name is Courtney Wampole. My husband and I own Get It, Got It. We are in Buffalo, Wyoming. We do screen printing, embroidery, DTF. We do laser. We do a little bit of everything, mostly business to business.
Okay, Zach, it's up to you.
Hi, guys. My name is Zach Puckett. I'm with Scasma Custom Apparel. We're in Longmont, Colorado, just north of Denver. We've been doing this about 22 years. I do some consulting on the side in the industry for businesses, as well as in-house. We do screen printing, embroidery, DTF, try to keep it simple.
Excellent. So we've kind of laid the groundwork there. Shop owners all dealing with the day-to-day of operating shop, employees dealing with human resources, production, all those fun things. And the last thing in the world you want to put a lot of brain power on is pricing, right? It's an exercise in, I think it's mental gymnastics in a sense. It's just a really tricky thing. And one of the things that I want to start off with, I want to talk about a specific type of pricing model. This is kind of foreign to a lot of people, this concept of revenue share. I think most people are used to in our industry of setting a wholesale price, selling it to the customer at the wholesale price. They either mark it up or just, pay for it. But revenue sharing is a kind of a unique thing to online stores, and specifically to InkSoft, because what you're doing is you're actually collecting the money on behalf of the customer and you're paying them a percentage. So the first question I want to go through with Cassie is, in your experience, what is the advantages and disadvantages of revenue sharing for your online stores? So revenue sharing versus bulk ordering. And you had indicated to me earlier that you use a kind of a hybrid model, but also I want to follow that question up with, you talk a lot about doing employer subsidies in your stores. So can you talk a little bit about revenue sharing versus bulk ordering?
Yeah. So we still obviously like to do the bulk orders. That can typically make you more money than just offering an online store for somebody. So it just kind of depends on the situation when a customer comes to us, what we feel would work for them and kind of work for us as well. So we do a lot of stores for fire departments, police departments, hospitals. That just gives easy access to the individuals themselves to place orders, less hassle sometimes than, going to your chief or whomever to get those orders in. It might not happen as quickly or as streamlined. So I think that does help. And then we do a lot of fundraiser stores with schools and some events. So those can get a lot of public attention, which brings more people through your store to see the things that you offer as well. So that's always a good thing. That can be a good potential for more business. The companies that we work with, we do have some larger companies that's kind of spread out across the U.S. We started with one locally here. And then, those companies, we kind of do it based on their needs and what they want to offer. Not all of them do a subsidy, but we have a lot that will do a 30% subsidy. So we actually lower the cost of the online item by 30% for the employees. and then we bill those companies monthly for the additional 30%. Sometimes they cover shipping costs and things like that. But I don't know, it's just really gotten us out in front of a lot more people. Once they hear that we can offer those for their business or organization, it can just make it a little bit more streamlined for people.
It sounds like you've made it easy for your customers to buy from you. Would you characterize it as that?
Yeah, it's kind of nice laying in bed at 10 o'clock every night, getting emails of all the incoming online orders from all the stores. So yeah, it's been a pretty good experience for us.
Excellent. A follow-up question to Zach and Courtney, trying to come up with percentages when you do revenue share stores. A lot of times I'll hear customers say, hey, listen, if you want a bigger revenue share, we have to charge more at retail. Have you guys found a formula that works for revenue shares for, online stores you're hosting on behalf of fundraisers or your customers?
For us, we do fundraiser stores. We do revenue shares, whether if it's B2B or a fundraiser, school, whatever, we give them that option. But we say, listen, we're taking a risk that you won't sell anything. And no one wants to hear that they're not going to sell anything on their store, but it's the reality. So we have to say, hey, for us to print on demand one item, this is what it costs. And then do you want to mark it up from here? And then we kind of leave it up to them based on who their market is, who they're trying to sell to, and what they think it will sell for. And they all have different reasons for doing it and for marking it up different ways. That's how we do it, just because we've had it where, hey, you have to meet a minimum. I know, Zach, I think Zach's braver than I am because he's like, I'll cancel all the orders. I don't care. And we used to do that. But then we run into it where, 5 people order for a cancer fundraiser or something like that, and you don't want to have to turn them down. And that's just how we've done it. So we have to make it financially make sense for us.
Yeah, Zach, I know you typically will run a store for a period of time. And as a screen printer, it's really going to be the best way of doing it. But if you get caught short, let's say you're going to run that store for 3 weeks and you get caught short in terms of hitting minimum order quantities. First of all, how often does that happen? And then when it does happen, how do you handle that?
It doesn't happen very often, to be honest. But out of a couple hundred stores a year, maybe 5 times, do we have that issue. We try to vet the stores pretty thoroughly. We also have a terms and conditions sheet that we hand our customers, and they understand it before we even start what's in it for them, what's in it for us. Sometimes we'll do a percentage model. Sometimes, and more often, I would say we just do a flat rate per piece back to the customer. But as Courtney indicated, we do refund either items that don't make minimums or stores, and work very carefully with the customer to make sure that doesn't affect our partnership.
I imagine putting the right product mix together is probably key to that, right? Try to keep it simple.
Yeah, for sure.
So next question I want to ask, I'm going to start this off with Cassie again. So charging for hidden costs and creative services. I know you have a background in graphic design. And so where's that line between adding value and giving away design time for free? And it's such a tricky thing in our industry. A lot of times customers they think art just falls out of a tree or just gets created out of the ether. How do you handle, art fees and the things of that nature?
Yeah, we've definitely implemented art fees more frequently now as we've, when you first start, you kind of want to get the customers, don't want to make anything a hassle, don't want to, detour them in any way. But definitely now that we're growing and it's obviously taking us time to create these things, if there's not a good vector file and they can't provide us something, Canva's the big thing these days. Right. But they don't always send you the right thing. So even that in itself is time consuming, trying to get them to understand what you need from that to get good artwork. But, and it depends on the client. If it's going to be a good client and that, they're just going to keep placing orders, if it's not anything tremendous, then sometimes we just waive that and we work with them. But definitely on the one-off orders and, I want to make a shirt for my mom, we're charging an artwork fee for that for sure.
Courtney, I know you use GraphicsFlow and you've used that as kind of a way to collaborate and reduce those art charges. How do you balance, like, customer comes to you, they have no idea what they want, you send them to GraphicsFlow to pick something out, and then you just customize it versus, hey, I'm going to send it to, I think you use GraphicsSource is your outsourced graphics company, like, hey, this is going to require something that's out of my skill range, and you're going to have hard costs associated with that. How do you steer the customer, and how do you balance that?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the customer for us. There's people that I know are not capable of doing it, don't want to do it, don't have the time to do it. And so those are the people I'm sending over to in-house art or outsourced contracted art. So it kind of just depends on who I'm dealing with. And a lot of people really love to use, whether it's the InkSoft Online Designer or GraphicsFlow, they really do love to use that if they're used to using something like a custom ink. The trick there is getting it in front of them before they've already used one of those other softwares to try and create that. So that's definitely been a marketing thing that we've been trying to kind of put that out in front of them. Hey, we have this. And whether that's giving them a percentage off, that's already baked into your pricing or something like that. So it's making it easier for you, but making it able for you to increase your margins on those orders.
So Zach, if you have a customer that comes to you and they say, hey, listen, I have a construction company and I need to get this full color screen printed on a black shirt image with this brand new crane we invested $250,000 in. And I want to I want to order 24 t-shirts. How are you going to handle that?
We treat everything like a partnership at SCASMA. We walk through it with the customer hand in hand. And we have 3 in-house designers, so it makes it a lot easier from that sense that I have those designers available. But if somebody does not have proper artwork, we do our very best to request it. And obviously, within reason, most of the time we do charge a fee to redraw artwork. If there is a giant construction company that has a huge order on the line, we may make an exception for that cost of doing business. But outside of that, we try our best to get everybody to get us art.
Yeah, I know when we had our shop, a lot of it is that initial conversation when you have with the customer, just educating them a little bit about artwork. You don't want to get too nerdy with them, but explaining them that it is a process. And it does have time and expense associated with it. So, which brings me to the next question. I hate being nickeled and dimed. I just want to price. How do you balance, that transparency between actually getting your costs covered without really nickel and diming a customer? I'll throw that out to Cassie.
We really just try to build it into the price overall, so we don't have those additional fees. We don't have screen fees for screen print. We kind of build that in. I have seen some shops charge for like an underbase, but we don't do that either. Maybe we should. But there again, I think we kind of build that in so that you don't have all those additional fees. Even with additional sizing for 2X, 3X, 4X, we used to have it where it was a separate line item and we would say extra sizing fee. We took that away and we just have a line for 2Xs, and they do cost more. But for some reason, the word fee, scares people, or they just think they're being charged more, nickel and dimed. I've seen a lot of times where we've actually come in a little bit higher in our pricing, but because the other place had fee, we got the job. So.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one. I think fees are a big red flag for me as a consumer. Courtney, how are you handling that kind of a situation?
Again, we're very much dependent on the customer, but I do agree, we've been baking it more into the pricing. So I am recouping screen fees, but depending on if it's a customer that's used to us charging them or it's a new customer and we're just baking it into the price, kind of just depends for us. Same thing with art. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. Like Zach was saying, if it's a huge construction company and you're not charging for art because you're getting 1,000-piece order or something like that, I think a lot of this shows that there's very individual situations and there's not a one-size-fits-all, whether it's between customers or it's between shops. That's kind of the approach that we've been taking, but I definitely agree. One of the things that's very hot topic is that credit card processing fee. And are you just charging 3% up on all of your stuff, or are you line iteming that and making it something that they see? I know when I go into a restaurant and they say it's 3%, if you want to run your credit card, it just says to me, I just want to know what's the total price. I don't need to know that that's separate out. So we've thought about doing something like 3% discount if you're using cash, because if they use a card, it's already in there, and kind of some of those different things. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of philosophies around that one. InkSoft has credit card surcharging that's built right in. And what we've seen with people that implement surcharging, they sure move a lot of customers to ACH. And I know running the business, man, the more people I can move to ACH, I'm only paying 1% versus say 3.5%. That's a pretty good win. So next question I want to ask is about product tiers. I'm a huge fan of good, better, best. And I think good exists for the sole purpose of pushing people to better and best. Cassie, how have you created good, better, best within your business?
Yeah, so we do the good, better, best marketing towards our customers, and a lot of times just by them feeling the garments. That's really with t-shirts, everybody wants a Bella canvas, but once they hear the price, they don't want to pay that. And it's really nice that Gildan and Tall-Tex, they've all came out with, some really affordable options that get you close to that Bella canvas feel. But obviously a little bit higher priced than your good category. So we sell tons of the better category, unless it's somebody that's just absolutely stuck on, they have to have the best, next level Bella canvas. But so we very rarely sell 100. We never even offer 100% cotton unless somebody asks for that. But 50/50 is our good category. And it's typically the CVC soft style from Gildan.
Right.
So we definitely get them to push to at least that middle round.
Courtney, how does good, better, best fit into your kind of marketing scheme?
Yeah, most of our customers and kind of how we position our business is that we are a partner in terms of getting you what you need. And so a lot of what we do is educate customers so that they're in the best place to make those decisions. So we actually have a 5,000 Gildan just sitting on a rack in the shop right in front of where I sit. And we always start that conversation with like, this is your bottom of the barrel. This is your basic. This is where you start from. And then we start touching and feeling other things and get that upsell in there. With the kind of turn from those super soft blend shirts to more of your urban fit and your urban feel, your comfort colors kind of coming back a little bit. A lot of times I'm starting the conversation with, is this an order that you've had before, whether they're coming from somewhere else or they felt a shirt they liked, and do you have a brand or a style in mind that you're looking for? And then they can sometimes spit out the exact garment number, and great, then my job's halfway over. If they aren't, then it's, what do you like? What are you looking for? How many people, what are we using this for? And then it kind of goes from there. So it's a very consultative sales process, I would say. But starting with that Gildan and putting that in their hands from the first time we start talking, it's rarely something that we're selling now.
Zach, how does that fit within your marketing plans?
Yeah, that's huge for us. We have about 1,000 square foot showroom and conference room area where customers come in. We get a lot of local people that want to check out product. And so we keep a lot of the samples that were just mentioned in-house, and we keep 5 to 7 shirts, particularly the sales reps and front of house staff are trained on showing people. And I have seen a huge movement back into super heavyweight cottons, into comfort colors, but I would say the district product, the DM130 for us, rules the roost by far. And my sales reps are very much trained to go out and good, better, best, but we obviously try to push that bar and continue to push it up.
So next question, I'm going to steer over to Courtney. What spawned that desire to change or to really put some eyeballs on your pricing strategy?
I feel like not everyone, but a lot of shop owners start because they have a passion for art or passion for production or like really artistic graphic design, that kind of thing. We're not typically always the best business owners or aren't skilled in that area. And so with us, you're working a million hours sometimes, it feels like, and it's like, how much money are we actually making? And that's really what spawned that for us, because I want to make sure that the numbers are dialed in. I want to make sure that the margins are there. We started tracking cost of goods, just very like gross profit on each job within Printavo, actually on one of those tabs, because we were just curious after the goods and like if it's transfers or art or some of the big stuff, what is the bottom line? And then trying to duplicate those jobs. When Brian gets off the press and he's like, that was really good. That was really quick. Let's do more of those jobs. I need to be able to say what jobs those actually are. And then there's the ones that for whatever reason, they go off the wire and they take a million years. You never want to do them again. And you made like $20 and you don't want to do those, or you need to fix what you just did and why it was priced that way. And so I really needed to be able to see what's going on and not just running this like I'm flying by the seat of my pants, really.
So, taking a look at the numbers and the metrics has been really helpful to you. Zach, you coming from a finance background, you probably have a completely different philosophy around pricing. And I know you well enough to know that you're making sure you're making money on every deal. So where are you kind of at this pricing journey in your business?
For me, I think it comes back to the reflection component and how are you reflecting on your price and starting really from backwards, starting from what does it cost you to produce that garment or that piece. A lot of suppliers, a lot of different people have come into the shop over the years and they'll ask me what my per piece cost is. And some people know that, some people don't. But it's something I highly recommend any shop owner or manager understanding is what is your per piece cost and then being able to go from there. So for me, that's where I start.
So when you're talking about per piece costs, you're talking about taking a look at all both your fixed and variable costs?
Yeah, for sure. Mostly your fixed costs. But what are those and what does your shop have? Being in a few shops or many shops over the years, however we want to put it, it just, everybody has different overhead. Their labor's different, their rent's different. What do you choose to do? Do you have that extra production person or that extra graphics person? And how does that affect your bottom line? And then when you're looking at that per piece cost, you can derive what you need to in a price list from there. And if you realize you're too high for your market, what do you have to cut out of that per piece cost to get that amount down?
Yeah, that's a great point. Reducing your cost to accommodate market conditions, taking that hard business owner's look at what you're really outlaying every month. Cassie, kind of where are you sitting in terms of your current pricing strategy? Are you satisfied with what you're doing? Are you looking at making some tweaks? I know it's been kind of, it's an ongoing experience, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. We are starting to track production times from, all the way from checking in to set up, just preparation of everything, because we've never really logged that to see how much time actually everything's taking to break everything down, make sure that we're making what we need to make. And then also like it's been since October, we've had screen print in-house. So we actually thought that we could possibly lower our pricing for screen print. But we've actually just kept the same pricing model from when we were contracting it out. And it works. It's not broke. Nobody's complaining. And we're keeping within the competition around the area. We're not really, I would say, overpriced. So we're comfortable with just keeping it where it's at. But yeah, we're definitely starting to track all that just to make sure, especially with now being 7,000 square feet. We keep adding employees because of the growth. So definitely something as you grow as a business owner, not anything I was very good at in the beginning until I started bringing more people on and, just bigger growth, maybe bigger problems that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, Courtney and I had another text message conversation about customer supplied garments, and I'm just really strict about that. It's not something we ever did in our shop. It was very rare, but living in a rural community in Wyoming, you don't really have a choice. They got to, if somebody needs to get their horse blankets embroidered or whatever, you want them coming to you, I'm sure, because then they're going to order all the rest of their gear, right? So what is your philosophy on charging for customer supplied goods? And first of all, show of hands, who's doing that? Everybody does it. So Courtney, how do you charge for it?
So a lot of how we price things, even when it's not customer supplied, is priced based on what's our shop rate, like what does it cost us to run our shop like for the hour, right? And then how long is that job going to take? And then kind of reversing that out. So this job is going to take 2 hours and your shop rate is $175 an hour. You divide that out by the number of pieces they're giving you. It's definitely a work in progress in terms of how we're pricing it, because when you have 2 Ariat jackets that were supplied to you and they're $250 each, but you could have gotten them for half the cost, it's like you hate to take that. You need to get in front of your customers to say, hey, we can wholesale all of this stuff and you're going to have a better price if you're going with us, even with our markup on top of that.
So the next question is, in today's age when everybody's like, sometimes it feels like we're a commodity broker and it's so easy for people to research online and price shop. How are you both positioning your company as more than just a decorator? It's one thing to say, hey, we're a screen printer or we're an embroiderer. People oftentimes identify their company by the production process, but it seems like we're creative consultants, like we're doing a lot more. How do you create that differentiation between being a decorator and like a full service, brand consultant or merchandising company, or, however you position your company? I'll go to you first, Courtney.
For us, it's about that partnership. This is my day to day. We've been doing this for almost, I've been doing this for 15 years, Brian for a little bit longer. And so it's been my day to day. I know style numbers off the top of my head. I know what things are going to work, what things don't work. And so I'm not expecting customers to know that. And that's really where we show that value to them. We do a lot of business to business. And so taking that off of their plate, they can go online and they can put an order in, or they can create their own art, or they can, use custom ink or some of those other softwares. But at the end of the day, they don't have the time. They're busy business owners and they're looking to essentially contract out that part of their life and that part of their business to someone that can handle it. And that's where we kind of position ourselves for that added value, to be the experts on that and to take that away from them.
So we talked a little bit about customer perception. Zach, how do you kind of steer through that difficult conversation where people are just trying to bracket you into price and everything? They're just assuming that you're just a commodity broker, that a screen printer is a screen printer, embroiderer is an embroiderer. How do you create that differentiation? How do you have that tough conversation with the customer?
We're pretty blunt and upfront, pretty transparent. Again, we just let them know who we are and what we're doing, and that we're there to be their partner, that we want to solve a problem. I tell all my sales reps, I'm not there to sell screen printing, embroidery, or promotional products. We're there to solve problems and fix people's problems that they have. We're a solution-based partnership. So for the most part, that's how we go about doing it. And I know in particularly like with pricing and stuff, especially over the last couple of months, we're real upfront with that and just tell people.
Anytime you raise pricing, and I know we're sensitive about that. All of us are sensitive about having that kind of awkward conversation with customers about, hey, we have to raise our pricing for whatever the reasons are. And being able to have that open conversation, I think part of it's just a testament to the relationships you've built with people, that you can have that conversation. But how do you have that conversation? What forms do you send out a letter? Do you talk to them? Do you hope they don't notice on their next invoice? Like, do you try to stay proactive? I'm going to ask that question of you, Courtney, first.
So from a sales perspective, a lot of what we've been doing lately is going through using a CRM and then adding tasks or things like that onto them so we can get out in front of them and reminding them, hey, you did this time last year. Are you ready to reorder? That kind of thing. And then just being there and being upfront with them is really how we've been dealing with it.
What's your thought on that, Zach?
Yeah, I agree. We don't make a big deal. We just, this is what it is. And cost of doing business. If it's a big, huge customer, sometimes I'll take them out to lunch personally as the owner of the company and have a lunch with them and explain, hey, we're going up 3%, 5%, 7%, whatever we have to do. But outside of that, it's just a pretty straightforward conversation. And we try not to put out any quotes if we've had a recent price bump without notifying people. Obviously, if you ordered 6 months ago, it's a little bit easier to explain to that person that, obviously in 6 months we had a price bump and that's okay. But if they just ordered a couple weeks ago or a month ago and then all of a sudden you're bumping prices, I feel like you got to at least say something.
What are your thoughts on that, Cassie?
We don't make a big deal about it. We don't send out an email. But typically all of our stuff is a lot of business to business. So I think the business owners understand, like, even in their case, costs are rising, for all the things that they're doing. So typically no one's really upset or angry about anything when they realize that something they ordered, 6 months ago or a couple months ago even is higher now than it was prior. So we have pretty understanding customers. So we're pretty lucky in that area.
Always feels like the folks that push back on that are folks that don't really think of your relationship as a partnership. Those kind of those one-sided relationships, which are, in my experience in business, those are the least fun types of relationships to have with customers. We don't always get to have those candid, open discussions and quote friendships, that where the business relationship kind of migrates into a friendship. We don't get to have the luxury of that with every customer. But I think, one of my customers put it best, said that, the best way to fire one of those people is to raise prices till it meets your level of tolerance. That's an interesting philosophy. It works. So I know you're a numbers guy. You come from a finance background. There are just a crazy number of kind of hidden costs and extraneous costs, especially around screen printing. And how do you make sure you're accounting for all that? Do you guys have a process? Let me give you like a specific example, color changes, right? A salesperson would go out and say, hey, listen, you're going to order 48 white and 48 black, but there's a color change and you can't, it's really two separate orders. You're going to have to reburn screens for that. So how do you account for that? What would be the conversation that you would have with the customer? How do you train your salespeople on that? How do you get everybody synced up so they're not quoting things in a fashion that is going to have a negative impact on your bottom line? What's your overall philosophy on those hidden costs and things that are very real to you, but maybe don't resonate great with the sales team or a customer?
Originally when we started, I think it's tough in your first year when you don't have solid numbers, but once you get past that, you have all your tangibles. What did it cost to do business last year? And I think that for us, it was an annual review, then it was a biannual review, then it was a quarterly review, and now it's down to a monthly review, all this particular stuff, making sure we're covering cost, labor, all those different things. And we mainly review it. As far as the color change stuff, this is a big thing that Printavo has helped our shop with, is down there in that fee box. We were actually able to upload all of our fee structure in there. And I gave my sales reps this choice. If you want to charge that person a fee, as in the customer we were just talking about, where you want to charge because maybe, I'll be straight up, they're a pain and they're not fun to deal with, you can put that fee on there. A lot of times those people are going to go away. Otherwise, you can price that invoice out with that, understand yourself and do the math and add that to the garment above and take that fee back out and include that as a price. But we're able to put our fee structure in a way that it still makes it easy for the sales reps to go out and they still have it. If we're doing a color change, if we're doing specialty ink, if we're doing packaging, bagging, any of that type of stuff, it's all in there as a fee structure. And then we just add it back into the program price in most cases.
Yeah, that's smart. I'm a huge fan of giving salespeople a little bit of strategic pricing flexibility that's closely monitored, that has strict boundaries, because it's a very useful tool out in the wild, especially when you're getting compared against other vendors that, price differently, right? So volume discounts and bundling, this is an interesting one to me. What works better? Strategically placed natural price points around volume discounts, or really a true accounting for what your cost savings are at economies of scale? Or is there a balance there? How do you go about that, Zach?
I'm a big true cost guy personally. I don't do blanket discounts. We do volume tiers. Only when our cost truly drops. It just helps our bottom line at the end of the day. Over the years, I have done the other, but that's just where we're at and where I prefer being at this point. Is when you start getting a larger labor pool and dollars start increasing every month, you really got to account for those costs.
Well, I think there's another factor there from a psychology point of view. Are you giving the volume discounts because you're willing to accept a smaller margin at bigger sales because you're going to make it up in volume? or are you giving that volume discount because you have true economies of scale that are reducing your costs, and trying to find that balance is such a tricky thing. As your volume grows, not using the same percentage discount, actually compressing it, do that. Where are you at with that, Courtney?
Similar to Zach, we're kind of really trying to figure out, is it make sense for us? And I think a lot of people who have bought shirts for a really long time are just so accustomed to this, like, buy more and it's less at every single tier. One of the things we've been kind of taking a look at is we do DTF for certain things that we need to do it for. But we're not printing them here. So I'm subbing out the transfers that we're getting in. And a lot of them are, up to a certain gang sheet length, it's a certain square inch price. And after that, it's the same. And so at some point, you're not getting a crazy big discount on the shirts because you're ordering some kind of, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And then the transfer prices aren't going down. And then you can only print as fast as you're printing. So, pressing 200 or we're not pressing 200 shirts or 300 shirts here because we're screen printing them. But, we can imagine that some of these shops that are just doing DTF now, how does that look for them in terms of are they actually saving money or are they just discounting because we're used to discounting? And that's kind of something we've been looking at lately with the DTF for sure.
Well, Cassie, you'd mentioned that, you decided to pocket the reduction in your production costs from going from contract printing to screen printing, but you also have in-house DTF. So that has kind of changed the equation for you. How do you handle price breaks around your DTF product line, and especially comparing it to how you price with screen printing? Do you price them the same way, or do you have different pricing for your DTF?
DTF is definitely different. We do have some price breaks, but definitely not like screen print. There's the pre-press, the press, the post-press. There's just a lot. It's nice. It is nice. And we don't run here in Indiana. I don't know. In our area, we don't have many jobs that go over 3 colors for screen print. We just don't have that demand. We don't have that request. So we do screen print a lot. But when you are dealing with the full color, that's nice. I guess I don't know the comparison for setup on press and how long that takes because we don't run at those amount of colors. But I do know, our price breaks definitely are different with DTF just because we can't really save much time. It doesn't make the process go any faster. So we do not have the same price breaks for DTF that we do for screen print and embroidery.
Hey, Zach, I'd ask you this question because I know you guys have the capability to do like the 8-color simulated process. What's kind of that breaking point where you're going to try to steer the customer into DTF on those full color designs versus screen printing? Is it based on the art setup? Is it based on just the overall production costs? What are the variables that you're looking at?
For me, we run about 400 shirts an hour on our auto. So when you compare that to 15 seconds on a DTF, it doesn't even compare. So for us, it was like around 48 pieces is how I made my price list. 48 and below will DTF. Once it's over that, we're screen printing. And I made that really, really abundantly clear in the pricing to our sales reps. And we still have some customers that have done like a 24 shirt order at DTF, and they'll come in, they want 250 shirts in DTF, and that's what they want. And they're paying a premium for it. But if that's what they want, then we'll do it for them. It just, your rate of production is drastically slower with DTF.
Zach, is that for any number of colors or just that 8 color that he was talking about?
That's more like a real detailed or photo simulated process. We're running that. I mean, we can get up into the 800, 900 per shirt range when you're running one of those autos. So compare that to, per second, what's coming off of that oven versus the heat press with the DTF. It's just very different.
Yeah, one of the things the next question I kind of wanted to lead into is bundling. We're seeing a trend, a couple different trends that I'm seeing. One of the trends I'm seeing is, 100 shirts for $550. With typically they'll have, it's one color on a black t-shirt or whatever. So we're seeing people doing like this bundling pricing where instead of having traditional price breaks, they're selling in increments of like 100. at a bundle price. We're seeing that. But the other thing too is putting logical prices together. If it's up to me, I'd sell a decal with every single order. Would you like fries with that? To print decals is like printing money. Have you strategically, Zach, put together bundles with like complementary products formally on your price list, or is that just an informal thing that you do with your sales team? And have you experimented in any 100 shirts for $550 type of program?
Yeah, we have weekly sales meetings with the sales staff, and deals is something that I want to hear about. And they call other vendors, talk to other vendors. We have good relationships with other people, and we all kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And like one of the ones that we run annually is a summer camp special. All of our schools out here do summer camps, and we'll run bundles for summer camp. And honestly, it's the same pricing if they're over 100 pieces,
right?
But it's presented in a different, easier to read format, and it's kind of that, do you want to go to a car dealership that nickel and dimes you, or do you just want to pay the $40,000 for the vehicle? And so it's just presented in a different light. And we actually do postcards, and we let our sales reps take them out. They take them out to all the schools, preschools, and other places for that particular one. But yes, we do. I'd say once a month we do some type of sale in that realm.
So it's a psychology thing more so than
For me, 100%. Yeah. I know some of the other vendors around here do it as a discount to get business. I'm not so much on that training.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the 100 shirts for $550. And I know there's some pretty big companies that build a whole business around that philosophy. But it feels like it is kind of commoditizing things. What are you doing with bundling, Courtney?
We do a lot of the similar stuff that you guys are talking about. One thing that 4-H is huge here. We kind of package the same deal. A lot of them are getting 24 to 48 pieces, one color front, one color back. So we package that in a way that makes sense for, the marketing part of it, and just get them what they need. We also add banners. We don't print them here, but that's also kind of like a decal thing. We add that in as part of like a bundle with that, because a lot of them need banners for the parade or the rodeo or whatever that looks like. So we've been trying to do a lot of stuff around that.
I'm glad you brought up the banner thing, because especially if you're doing anything to do with fundraising or event marketing. I just taught the InkSoft Academy class on event marketing, and it's just so easy to broker banners. You're never going to see the product. You're just sending in the art. You have a company. Who did you use recently for your bulk banner printing, Courtney?
We use Signs 365. I can't say enough good things about them. If anyone has used them or needs a referral or anything like that, they're awesome. Never ever thought I would like banners as much as I do. Definitely art needs to be perfect, because they are like strict contract, has to be completely dialed in. They're just printing what you send, but the margins on them are amazing. And we kind of have become almost the go-to banner place in our town because of what we're doing with them. I've started to do some window decals and stuff. I'm not installing anything, but there's a lot of margin in a lot of those products that are just an easy add-on that doesn't really require knowledge or any kind of manpower on our part.
So we got some upvotes on bundling decals and banners and yard signs with our apparel. Is that right? This is the last question I want to talk about, and it's the most controversial one. So I've been herding cats, aka managing sales teams, for the last 30 years of my life. Don't have to do that now in my current role, but the salespeople just want to get numbers over the line, right? They just want to get deals done. They want to have that flexibility that we talked about earlier. But in a sense, if they don't have any, quote, skin in the game in terms of, the profitability for the company, they'll price everything out in a manner which doesn't necessarily align with your financial goals, right? So long story short is, how do you build a pricing or commission model and a compensation model for your sales team where they are a part and they're participating in the profitability of the company? And so I would ask that question to Zach, and if either Courtney or you, Cassie, have some input on that, I'd appreciate that too.
For me, it was just real simple. I build a team mentality at Scasma and tell the wholesale staff that they're supporting the back and the back supports them. And if they just put in crap in is crap out, and if they want to do that to the team and back, then a lot of times the team's going to get frustrated and the quality and product that they're putting out isn't going to want to be that level on their job. So if they do the best that they can to set up the back for success and praise the back being all my printers, our embroiderers, the customizers, then there's a beneficial teamwork relationship there. And then we also do very small bases for our sales reps, and we do commission after that. And my sales reps know me well enough that if we put a job through that lost money for the shopper, doesn't make sense, we're not getting commission on it.
Yeah, my dad used to always say his favorite check to write is a commission check to a salesperson. And you have to think that one through a little bit first before it clicks with you. Any insight on that, Courtney? I know you have an outside sales force as well.
We have an account manager. She does do a lot of sales. Her husband is a youth pastor, so there's a lot of opportunity for her there. So I don't think I have it dialed in. Work in progress. I'm doing most of our sales, and so what you were saying, Craig, about, your sales team just kind of wants to get numbers across the line. Still part of my sales background wants to do that. And I don't always give Brian a slam dunk. And so we're really working on that because at the end of the day, it is also my profit as the owner. And so it's kind of a mental hurdle for me on that one.
Selling from a position of strength, right? When you're working with a customer, it's so easy to be a people pleaser with the client by lowering the price. Who's going to say no to that, right? But kind of not digging in your heels, but being, forthright with the customer. I was taught by one of my sales mentors that, when customers ask you for a better deal, that, what I tell them is like, hey, listen, I have certain parameters and a little bit of flexibility, and I can walk you right up to that line, but I can't take put 1 foot over that line. And we are at that line right now. And I don't fault you at all for asking the question for a better deal, but we're at that point where I just don't have any room. Fair enough. And then, you just kind of get past it, because it definitely certain customers, I don't know if you found this, Cassie, they just want a deal and they're shameless about asking. How do you handle those folks?
Well, we don't have any salespeople, so it's just me mainly that's dealing those issues when, people want a price break or whatnot. But it can be difficult at times because you want to gain their business.
I know one thing that I talk to my reps about is we all, as screen printers and embroiderers, people in this industry, say that there's plenty of business in this industry, and there truly is. And I tell my sales reps all the time, you want the person that's easy to work with. If you have somebody that's trying to bark you down on price, like you were talking about with that league, I had a league that was worth $600,000 a year, and we turned them down because it was some of the lowest profiting work that we had. And by turning it down, we became instantly more profitable. I think that keeping an eye on some of that too, just getting a customer to get a customer. We celebrate wins big time with our sales reps, but it has to make sense.
I was just going to say, one of the things that stuck with me is something Zach said on our call that we had to prep was his favorite word is no to say. And my least favorite word to hear from people is no. And I wish I had more of Zach and less of me, because I fall into that trap so many times of saying yes, discounting just to discount. And do you come down just because your customer asks? It is one of the most gratifying things that when you tell them, no, sorry, this is our price. And then they were like, oh, okay, that's fine. And try it. If you have not tried it, even if you don't do it all the time, just try it, because it's worth it. And after our call last week, we had someone come in for a store, and I said, okay, well, I tried to do something that Zach would do. And I said, okay, if you don't hit this number, then you have to buy out the rest of these at this rate. And they were like, oh yeah, that's fine. And so without kind of holding your ground or trying it out, you don't know what that could be. And challenging myself to try that more because it just puts more money in your pocket.
So I'm going to wrap up with one last question. Going back to when you were first getting started in the business, knowing what you know now, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give yourself if you were starting this thing all over again?
Kind of the statement that we had from another question. Do you want to be the operational business owner, or do you want to be a business owner of an asset? If I could have answered that question and geared my business differently towards something like that, I think that if I would have learned that earlier on, I would have had a stronger, more successful business faster.
Do not say yes to everything. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should do it. You really just need to lean into what you're really good at and double down on that.
I think for us, it would be, or for me, having processes in place. We kind of grew so quickly that I feel like we've never had a chance to catch up and just get everything in place like we need to. So preparing better, having more things in place, processes, I guess looking into the future of what growth you could have. That's definitely kicked me in the butt.
Well, it's been fun being a part of that process with you, Cassie. Now that you've had a very successful journey with InkSoft, and now you've adopted Printavo and GraphicsFlow, and I've been helping you out a little bit with that. And Courtney is an absolute master at all three of our platforms. And I know, Zach, you are working very hard with Printavo and implementing that into your business, and you're a pretty big fan. So we appreciate your business. We appreciate you coming on this webinar today and sharing your experience with our listeners and viewers. And I very much appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy days. So again, thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Cassie. And thank you, Zach. We will see you all on the next Decorator Academy. Thank you.